everybody. Hello. We're going to start in a minute. We're going to talk about what's going on in Nova Scotia, in the east coast of Canada right now, in Miami, and about to and also Richard Taylor, and see what's going on. And hear people and their voices, and we're going to have more conversations like this. The next one we'll have about this issue will be on Tuesday at the same time, same place. The Tuesday conversation we'll hear from women in Miami. And but today I'm going to start very quickly because we lost a very good time yesterday, and again my apologies, has some technical issues, and I'm going to jump right into it. So I'm going to bring in Tyler, and then well, hello, sir.
Good evening, Shahin.
Hello. Tyler, thank you very much for joining us again. I'm very sorry about what happened yesterday, but we're not going to spend too much time on that. We got a good chunk of it. You got a lot of words that we managed to put it out there, and it's out there online. I just want to tell our friends here, Tyler is a band member of Member 2. Lived in Nakadek during his youth. He considers both his home communities. He earned a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology and Anthropology from St. Mary's University and a Master of Arts on Sociology from the University of Guelph. His graduate research was focused on identity construction, cultural authenticity, and decolonization. Previously, Tyler worked as a research manager for a startup company in artificial intelligence. Watch out, people. Prior to that, he had worked in communications with Member 2 and held a number of student roles such as Aboriginal student advisor, graduate student teaching assistant, as well as completing 3 consecutive internships with the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. Tyler has been a Sundancer with White Eagle Sundance in Elsipogtog since 2008. And where are you right now, Tyler?
I'm in my home in Enfield.
And what is going on?
So what's happening in Mi'kma'ki, specifically in Nova Scotia, is Sabeganagadi, after 21 years without any progress from the federal government, is asserting their right to fish and to make a living off of that fishery through a means of pursuing a moderate livelihood. And that right, as we've talked about, is an inherent right of all Indigenous people, but specifically to the Ilnu people, who always had a right to that resource within this territory, and with the inherent right to self-determination, and never having surrendered any lands through treaties, that was upheld and recognized. It was first recognized in the Constitution Act and later affirmed in the Supreme Court decision in Marshall and Marshall II in 1999. So when the band and the fishery asserted that right to fish, the backlash from the commercial fishery was not one of, they weren't coming from a place of wanting to understand. It was very clear that they felt threatened, and it was very clear that they had an entitlement issue and that they were not okay with the Mi'kmaq pursuing this right. And there was a lot of misconceptions, and those misconceptions...
Tyler, if you could pause for, Tyler, my apologies, if you could pause for a second, go back to the decision by the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Was that a new and new terms on what was accepted in 1752? Or was it
So
reaffirmation of the 1752?
right. So the Supreme Court decision that came with Marshall and Marshall II were not new necessarily. They were just affirming what ill-knew people already knew, and what was outlined in the treaties of 1752, 1760, and 1761. We were always aware that we had this right. This was something that wasn't brought down the moment or through the process of Donald Marshall being having his catch seized, his eels seized by DFO. What was new was from my understanding, is the concept of moderate livelihood was a new idea that came from Marshall II. So again, something that since 1999 has yet to be defined. And what a lot of people are saying is like that's a failure on the federal government's end.
How is that? I'm not sure I follow. Just the fact that the Supreme Court said that, uh, reaffirmed what was already discussed many times, put on paper, they shook hand on it between these people and the Crown. Now that the Supreme Court of Canada comes in and says this, but are you saying that the issue of the moderate livelihood was added during that conversation with the Marshall decision?
From my understanding, the concept of moderate livelihood came from Marshall II, and the definition was not outlined at that moment, and it was something that the federal government was basically to figure out later. Because prior to that, in the treaties and in the inherent right of Indigenous people, it wasn't, our concept was never rooted in capitalism. It was never about commodifying the resource. It was just take what you need, but use what you take. And I think everyone who's been following is familiar with the concept that informs the management plans of Netigalum. And that is to not exploit the resources, but to ensure that they're available for the next 7 generations. So pursuing the fishing in a moderate livelihood, I don't think was something, from my understanding, was something that came out of 1999.
After the first decision.
Right.
Yes. And I remember that time, when the first one happened through the Supreme Court of Canada, and then there was huge backlash from the white fisher community, and then the second decision or second negotiation had to be done, which never fully appreciated and accepted by the whole of the community. And that's what is at dispute here, correct?
Yeah, you got it right, Shahin. So like that, the backlash in 1999 was predominantly observed in Burnt Church in New Brunswick and Esconobedich, and the same conflicts that we're seeing today in southwest Nova Scotia, out of Metegan and Saulnieville, are essentially the exact same conflicts. Is that one group of non-Indigenous fishers and a commercial industry feels that their livelihoods is being threatened, that they should have an entitled, either they think that they should be entitled to the same thing, or they feel like they're threatened, and they want to, they're refusing to recognize our Indigenous and treaty rights, and want to control it and control how it's implemented, and force us to comply with their commercial season, which is not practical. It's not the same fishery, and anyone who's read up on on the topic will know that the reasons for the season, as they say, is because the commercial fishery is overfishing. They're using
Now,
gear and way more boats and way more traps than anyone pursuing a moderate livelihood would.
by far.
But to put it into context, the moderate livelihood fishing is about 0.001% of the total commercial fishery.
Excuse me, can you say that again?
The moderate livelihood fishery is approximately 0.001% of the entire commercial yield. So that's about fewer than 0.1%. Yeah, negligible. And this is what scientists like Chef and Megan Bailey have said. The scale of moderate livelihood is not going to have an impact on the conservation.
My understanding is that, I mean, when I look at the whole situation, I'm like, why are these fishermen are even part of this conversation?
And they
The
shouldn't be.
treaties were between the Mi'kmaq Nation, the Mi'kmaq, Maliseet, Passamaquoddy, Penobscot, and the Crown. Why are these people even talking?
That's exactly right, Shaheen, and I don't know why they feel so entitled or that they should have a spot at the negotiation table, which isn't the right term to use either. Like, no one's negotiating the right. The right is not up for negotiation. So the implementation table, I guess, commercial industry has no spot there. They have no say. This is a right. It's not something to be compromised, and they don't have an entitlement to be consulted on it. But why they feel like they should be, that just goes to show the lack of awareness, the lack of education, and the lack of regard for and appreciation for Indigenous history and culture.
Or perhaps just pure greed.
Pure greed would be the root of it, I think.
I think so. Um, you're a learned man. What do you think will happen? Will there be negotiations, or people will stand for what was agreed in 1752?
So, speaking ideally, we would see the federal government protect Innu people, protect our rights, and uphold their end of the treaty, and recognize that, and they wouldn't be allowing. They would just be recognizing that we have the right to self-determination and to implement this and govern ourselves on this matter, and in the larger goal of self-determination and self-governance as recognized in all of the before mentioned treaties and proclamations and declarations on human rights. However, looking at the history of it, I can see that I'm very wary of the federal government's double speak, where they'll say one thing but mean another. And instead of calling it a negotiation process, they'll probably call it a consultation or some kind of implementation process where they'll try to have some concessions. And from the sound of the emergency debate that was held the other night with Canadian MPs, the emergency debate on the situation here, it sounds like a lot of those MPs think that the commercial industry is a key stakeholder and should be present at these talks. And I don't think that should be the case. These are treaties that are nation to nation, like you said, Shaheen, between sovereign peoples and the Crown. Now, there's no sovereign nation of commercial fishers. And if there ever were, they didn't sign any treaty with the Mi'kmaq people. So they don't have any say here. So how do I see this going? I can see the federal government wanting to define it, But I don't think I will appeal to and cite what Shelley Denny had said, is that it exists better as a concept rather than something that is defined and limited. Because at the moment that we define it, we lose a bit of the right by having any kind of limit on it. So I would like to see our leadership go without any limits, but to continue to push our concepts and inform how we implement and exercise these rights based on new values of conservation and how we have always valued ensuring that the next 7 generations are able to access the same rights that we can today.
Do you see a different um, leadership now compared to years ago? I personally can see a different attitude from people, different leadership, uh, uh, more of a unified voice. Um, the indigenous people standing up with one voice, and not just in Canada, but being supported all over the Turtle Island.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is what I see, but you're right in the middle of it. Do you see a different leadership nowadays than before? And you think that would have a different impact on the rights of the people?
For sure, definitely. There's a different. What we're witnessing is a generation of people who were aware of what was going on when Burn Church happened, and we have a generation of leaders who are aware of what happened in Ganawage, Ganasatage, Ipperwash, with the Idle No More, and seeing these constant struggles. And like, it goes back way further. Like, this goes back before even Custer's Last Stand, of this history and tradition of Indigenous resistance and about asserting our rights, freedoms, and liberties. And we have a generation where our population is growing demographically. We're the fastest growing demographic in Canada. And not only that, but we're accessing education and having greater success with education than ever before. We have more professionals in the field. We have more lawyers now, more more professionals that can support leadership. So it's not just that we have great individual leaders, they have great teams behind them of our own people who are passionate about this and want to see. And it's all in pursuit of self-determination and self-governance, because the paternalistic governing from the colonies, the colonizing nations, have left our people impoverished, have removed us from our own lands, and removed us psychologically from knowing that our land and our rights don't stop at the border of the reservation. That is not our concept. Reservations were created as an act of war, and our existence now is rooted in defying those acts.
Um, Tyler, I just want to say something to our viewers. Please, uh, we're talking about the fishery situation in Nova Scotia, which now is going across the country. Is growing inside Nova Scotia, going across the Atlantic, and we're seeing support from all over the Turtle Island, and not just in Canada, in US, and all over the Turtle Island. Those of you who are watching this, please, we're going to have another talk with few women from the community on Tuesday. At the same time, we're going to do that talk. But right now, you are able to share this talk and get this voice to people who are friends with you on Facebook and on your social media. So if you can, please do that. People need to be heard, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to put a different voice out there. a voice that is not filtered through the usual media and the usual political talks. This is coming straight from the people on the ground. So if you can, please share it and tell others about the other talks we're going to have, especially on this issue. And that one will be on Tuesday. Tyler, if you could please stay online. I'm going to ask our friend Richard to come online. And then I would like to come back to you. I have another question. I want to finish our talk with that. So please stay online, and I'm going to bring Richard on now, and we'll continue this conversation. Thank you, Tyler.
Yeah, thank you, Shahin.
And I think, Tyler, you have to, yes. Yes. Okay, now we can bring Richard on. We learned a few things about this Facebook issues after our failure yesterday, and after a while we're gonna go. I think by beginning of next week we're gonna actually go to a different system, so we can do a better broadcasting of these programs. Richard is coming on. Richard is I know Richard for a while. He's an artist. He's a poet. He's an actor, a performance artist. Um, Richard Simon Taylor of Sipik Nekadik, Mi'kmaq, and Ojibwe. He's a youth worker. He's a sun dancer, traditionalist, Bachelor of Theater from Dalhousie University. He's an advocate and a founder of William Taylor Youth Project. We're just waiting for he's getting added to the conversation, and connection failed. I don't know why. And Richard has his roots go from his father's side to the west of Turtle Island, and from his mother's side all over the eastern side of Turtle Island, and he's very well connected to the community. And I'm very glad he was able to come and add to this conversation. Again, we're going to continue this conversation on Tuesday. Richard, there's no, it says that there's a guest, but there's no guest. I don't know why. I don't know why we're not able to add Richard. Again, I don't know why we're not. We were just having great conversation with Tyler, but I'm going to continue. Richard is. It looks like he's getting added, and I wanted to talk to Richard about the cultural impact of what's going on. I don't know why Richard is not able to get added. It says to me that there's another person is online, and that's why we can't bring him, but that's not the case. There's only, because Tyler just left. If we're not able to, I have sent a request. I can see that. If we're not able to add Richard, I'm going to ask Tyler to come back. And maybe I ask my question and Richard can write it for us, and this will, the recording and the comments will stay online, and everybody can benefit that way, because I don't want to see what happened yesterday, that we spent a lot of time. I don't know why it was easy to add Tyler and now we're having difficulty adding Richard. So I'm just going to give it another second. If I had asked a couple of other people, and if they send me, they know who they are. I had asked them if they're able to come online, which we're going to see them on Tuesday anyway. So we're going to continue this conversation with the women from the community on and hear their voices on Tuesday. Again, Richard failed, so I'm going to ask Tyler to come back. And I'm gonna ask my question to Richard, and maybe he can write it for us, or we might have to do just phone him. Well, I phone him, and then what? If I phone him, I guess I can phone him, and then have his voice. I guess that is one way. Okay, people really want to hear Richard, and we're not gonna give up. We're gonna do that. I'm gonna just call Richard. And it's ringing. Hello, Richard. Hello, Richard. Hello? Hello, Richard. Hi. I don't know what's going on, but this is let's not waste time. Let's just go, and I'm gonna do this, and that's it. Whatever works. Richard, I just read your short bio. I want to get into it right away because I want to bring Tyler back again before the end. I was just saying that Richard is an artist, but from his father's side, he's connected to the west of Turtle Island, and from his mother's side to all over the eastern part of Turtle Island. You're very well connected to the community. You always lived in the community. Uh, you went to school in the community. You got married in the community, and I want to ask you, how do you feel? I mean, culturally, every time something like this comes up, you as an artist, as person who's part of this community, how do you feel, Richard? And I have to say, if I say, like many people do say, I really feel for you, this must be a very difficult time. I could never understand how difficult it is for somebody like you in situations like this. So I'm very sorry about what's happening. Again, we see racist acts, uh, discrimination, and I want to hear from you. How do you feel about all of this, Richard?
Well, I think that, one thing I will quickly share with you all is that I actually did grow up in Ottawa, so I didn't go to school in my home community of Sabaganagadi. I've been here now for over 20 years between Halifax and basically between Halifax and Sabaganagadi. My mother lives there now, and I run a sweat there at my mom's house. And so I'm regularly involved with my community, and I love them dearly, and I think that my community loves me right back just as hard. So it's always an honor to sit and chat about them. And so anytime that I'm doing the work that I do, whether it's with the youth that I serve or in the various capacities in which I find myself acting, the various actor, poet, writer, fun dancer, academic, all these various things, the one thing that continues to remain with me within the very fabric of my being is indeed that direct connection to Sabaganagadi. More so than the Ojibwe side of my family, who I also love very dearly. But in my journey of life, it's actually only become now that I've grown fully connected and rooted to my own identity, particularly when it comes to my two tribes, and in this case, Mi'kmaq. So when I see my cousins water, and you have these men in very vulnerable positions, not just physically, not just because they're in dangerous positions with regard to fishing because it's inherently it comes with some levels of danger. But these men and these women, you see them hugging, you see them crying, you see them breaking under the pressure of this situation. These are individuals who we must remember actually carry with them a number of other pieces of baggage that come from intergenerational trauma. And so this is not just an isolated situation that it's the fisheries thing. It's the fisheries thing. There's also, the effects of Indian residential school and the effects of various Gladue factors that are all culminating into the current situation that is unfolding as we speak.
Richard, I know what I feel and what I think every time I see something. I'm not anything close to how you feel about the discrimination in the society. But I have had my share. So when I see stuff like we're all in the same boat, we're all in this together. These past few days, I see stuff going around, people taking pictures with signs up. We're all 3D people, which I don't even know what that means. How does these things make you feel? Do you feel like this is great that everybody's on your side, or do you feel that your place is being taken?
Well, I think early on, my feelings have certainly changed from where they started in the beginning of this situation, where I really did feel, I think, re-victimized in a number of ways. Once again, I'm seeing my people lose out on their rights, and I'm seeing the fallout of that. But I do remind myself now that what I'm seeing is, like, for example, one thing that I noticed, and it may seem so arbitrary or it's such a small detail, but folks in the media are actually pronouncing Sabaganagidi correctly. And it was Curtis Michael who actually shared a video online just about how to pronounce the name of our community. And so people are actually using also the term Mi'kmaq as opposed to Native or Indian or anything like this. So perhaps there has been some shift with regard to how we are received and perceived within the media. We're also seeing many people, I like to use the term allies, coming forward to support indigenous fisheries and buy Mi'kmaq lobsters. We're seeing restaurants go on record and say, you know what, we're just not selling lobster until we can buy Mi'kmaq lobster. So there almost appears to be, for the first time in my knowledge, a full-on sort of societal shift in their perception of indigenous people, particularly in this case Mi'kmaq people. It seems we're being embraced almost as though investing in our story and supporting the conscious.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. That's great. I asked Tyler from the people side. Do you see a different leadership and different attitude from the people themselves towards the dealing with the treaties that and if you do you think it will have a different effect this time dealing with the crown?
Yes, the answer is yes. So I can't help but notice and even admire Chief Mike Sack is releasing statements to the media that are short, concise, and direct, and he's leaving very, very little room for any kind of misinterpretation or twisting of his words. And I find that remarkable. And so, as he is the chief, he is also part of that collective that is the council. So I can't help but imagine and imply that the council must be collectively identifying strategies that are being used in this situation. Another thing that we're seeing is that despite with intergenerational trauma, it's a pretty difficult balancing act to have to deal with on a daily basis. And then instead of turning to violence and retaliation, instead we're seeing our people stand and defend, but without retaliation, which I think is absolutely remarkable, because it is not allowing any sort of violence to be justified toward them. So I cannot commend the people of the Mi'kmaq of Sipekne'katik enough with how much they are truly shining in this situation. Despite the pain and the suffering, they continue to flourish. They continue to evolve and show their true strength and power by refusing to engage and let into traps of violence and retaliation. It is truly a plight, because it's difficult out there for them. They're crying. They're breaking down into actual tears. People are crying. Men and women are crying. And that is, instead of retaliating, they're emoting, which is absolutely incredible. It's showing healing in this situation. It's the human condition where they are healing. And that, I think, is the most powerful thing of all in all of this. And as Mike said, as Chief Mike said, we're going to beat this thing 10 years ahead on it. We're going to be even further ahead than if we would have gone any other way with it. And I support that. I believe that.
Well, you mentioned something very interesting. At the same time that our people are emotionally being affected greatly, but this is coming at the same time with a strength and a unified voice and very strong, clear, concise words that are coming from the community. At the same time that people are crying, you're saying that they're standing together and they're supporting this emotional situation that everybody's going through, but at the same time things are being done very clearly, very unified, with one unified voice from the people on each reserve. But it seems to me that it's going across Turtle Island all over.
Yes. So this idea of pride is truly flourishing. We're seeing resistance done in a way that we haven't seen in many of the other events that we've seen. Many of our other confrontations start off peacefully and then they end in violence. And here we're at the precipice of a point where typically, historically speaking, we would see a violent encounter occur. And yet our people still remain strong and adamant and refusing to give up and refusing to give in. And so it's causing a surge in pride. It's causing a surge in healing. And I stand by and I look at my tribal members, my fellow Sipekne'katik band members, and I am in awe at what they're accomplishing, because this is going to reverberate for the 7 generations to follow, so to speak. The true power rests in the people, and the people are truly unified in solidarity, and it is truly incredible.
That was well, I'm still thinking about what you said, that this all happening because people have found a new pride in who they are and what they stand for, and who they are together. And that is the reason they are able to deal with this situation different than before. Um, Richard, I don't know what's going on with your phone or is my system. Um, um, Thank you very much. I know people keep saying, writing, bring them on camera. Yes, we had our first guest that I'm going to bring back now on camera. But for some reason, me and Richard, we were not able to connect through the guest camera here on Facebook. Um, Richard, I miss you. I hope situation changes with the travel, that I can see you soon. I wish you all the best. And again, you know, I'm very sorry about what's happening with the people and with your community, but at the same time, I'm glad to hear from you and others that people are standing strong and they're finding the new peace that is necessary for the community and the growth of the community, that it was not there before. This is something new and incredible, and I'm very happy for you.
Right. And I want to share one thing with you, Shahin.
Of course.
Please give Maggie and the kids a big hug from me. I can't wait to see you all again soon. But one thing that Chief William Nevin taught us was that there's such a thing. Him and Jesse talked about collateral healing, and this is an example just of that very thing: collateral healing. People are beginning to heal, and then those around them are beginning to heal. And this may very well be the vehicle in which we find ourselves in a state of collateral healing. So I firmly believe in our people. I firmly believe in our council and our chief, and I believe we are on the right path. And I hope that as I pray and I smoke and I smudge and I go to the sweat lodge, I hope that some of my energy and my prayers and my strength can reach the people on those front lines that are fighting for all of us.
Thank you very much, Richard. Collateral healing. Words of William Nevin, Chief of the White Eagle Sundance. I'm going to ask Tyler to come back. Again, Richard, thank you very much. I'm sorry the session was like this. Me and some friends, we are actually working on going through different formats that we can do these talks on a much better quality for sound and video, and be able to add different people. Hopefully we will have that by Tuesday. And Tuesday at the same time, we'll be talking with few women from the community in that area. Tyler, you heard Richard.
I did, yeah.
Said a lot of said. How do you feel about what Richard was saying?
I agree with Richard 100%. Like, he said it all, like, and that was a great tie-in with our teachings at Sundance and what Chief William and Dr. Jesse talked about in collateral healing. And there's intergenerational trauma that, like, that's a point that I think a lot of people overlook, is that our people are showing up and asserting the rights and are being met with violence, intimidation, and harassment. And that when you see those images on the media, what you don't see is the generations and the legacy of colonization, of imperialism and attacks, of genocide, and the legacy of Indian residential schools, where there was a deliberate destruction of our culture. The end goal being that they didn't want any more, and that people today are still carrying that baggage, even if they can't identify it. Those feelings of frustration and insecurity, and inadequacy is often how it comes out, and they come out in a lot of self-destructive or lateral violence. So like that insight from Richard, I think is so valuable, that it's not just that we're continuing to fight battles today, but we're fighting battles that are centuries old and may not even be aware of it.
When this whole thing happened, there was a lot of names out there being thrown at it. I right away I thought of it as a terrorist act. I mean, when somebody violently imposes fear and intimidation on a certain group of people, from coming from one group of people on another group of people, and is violent and is for intimidation to stop that group of people from getting something. And there's a history in the back of it. And I think that's very important, that there's a history to it, to this intimidation and to this violence from that group of people to this group of people. And it's done by this group of people who have everything, and they're organized in their imposing of their violence. It's usually called a terrorist act. But we don't see that coming from the law enforcement and the crown. What do you think of that?
I would have to, again, like, drawing from people like Stokely Carmichael, who has said in his writings and his speeches on civil rights in the America in the 60s, and the struggle of Black Americans for their civil rights. And what he often said is that, and quoting philosophy, is, can someone or an institution condemn themselves? And he came to the conclusion that, well, no, they can't. And in this case, the RCMP and the government of Canada can't condemn themselves for what you and I recognize as acts of terror, because that's exactly what they were set up to do. That is their purpose. Their purpose, and what Prime Ministers, John A. and Wilfrid Laurier are on record saying that Canada was always intended to be a white man's country. A race, Indigenous people, they put those policies into place. They knew what they were doing, and the organization of provincial, federal governments, along with the RCMP, continue to serve that end goal. It's so entrenched in that purpose is in the system, and that's where we get the phrase and the concepts of systemic racism. So why the media is not calling it what it is because the Canadian media can't condemn its own institutions, because we know that we're not citizens of this country. We're sovereign people. We're self-determining people. We just, at this point in history, are tethered to a colonial imposing government by forces outside of our own control. But we're organizing. We have an end goal. We have a method and a strategy of overcoming that colonialism and that imperial and paternalistic government. But why? Because those systems benefit the privileged and the status quo. They don't call it an act of terror because it's status quo.
Thank you. And I think that what you're saying, that this organized movement, this unified voice, organized movement, educated work that is coming, and that you're saying and identifying, and is very well seen, alongside what Richard was emphasizing on, a newfound pride in the people, that is bringing all this together and making it possible to stand in the face of violence and stand together and not give in to that kind of behavior and step down to their level. Um, um, and I believe it's working. I don't see any other thing. I don't see it any other way. This will work. This will work, and is working in the hands of and people on their own by themselves. It's working. I don't think there's any other way to do this, and I think there's no way for it to fail. This will succeed. And like both you and Richard said here, um, you're seeing a very different system of approach, and it's not just from your people on the ground, but it's the support, that kind of support, very different from before. It's coming from all over Turtle Island.
Yes, exactly. There's support coming from all nations. We're more connected now than we've ever been, and that's one of the advantages of what we're seeing. The church happened, we weren't able to document so quickly and get the message out there immediately in the way that we can today, and it's made all the difference. So
When
yeah.
the situation in Burn Church was happening, me and my wife, we got on car and drove from Halifax, and we went there, and we were there for a whole week in middle of that situation. That's when I met some of our Sundance friends. Um, yes, I remember that time very well, very well. And I'm glad things are not the same anymore. I'm very glad. And again, I'm very sorry for what's happening right now to you, the people. But at the same time, like I said with Richard, I'm happy that you're all finding the silver lining in this and standing together and feeling strong.
And
All the
that's
power
just,
to you, and thank you so much for your voice.
hey, thank you, Shahin, for providing the platform and reaching out and being a good ally and using your influence in a responsible way.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Again, we're gonna have other talks. I'm gonna say goodbye to Tyler. We're gonna have other talks tomorrow. I'm talking with a playwright, director, teacher about what's happening in Armenia and the situation in Armenia on the ground. Will be at the same time, 4 p.m. Pacific time and 8 p.m. Atlantic time. I'll be talking to Armina Lamana. Monday, I'll be talking about artist self system that Dinuk Vajrati has put out, and that'll be on Monday. And Tuesday, we'll be coming back to this subject and talking with some of the women from the community in East Coast of Turtle Island. And we'll be talking about this situation again on Tuesday. Thank you very much, everybody. Please share these things and get the words out. We're trying to bring a different voice out there that is not filtered and politicized as usually is through the media. People are chosen, and who gets to talk and who doesn't get to talk, and what kind of questions. Thank you very much again for being with us. Bye.